Hello there, welcome once again. And today I'm going to discuss with you Learning Delivery Modalities, Module 4 of our course 1 because it is requested by our viewers if I may provide a walkthrough about the LDM1 course, Module 4, Learning Delivery Modalities. So here it is po. So what you are seeing right now is your Module 4, which is entitled Learning Delivery Modalities Implementation Planning. Now that you have completed the readiness assessment of your school and completed your LDM Readiness Action Plan, you can now proceed to planning for implementing your chosen learning delivery modalities or LDM. Your LDM implementation plan will cover organizing learners and monitoring their learning, learning resource management, including the distribution and collection of learning materials, continuing professional development of teachers, risk management, and communicating with education stakeholders. So, for this module, our objective or goal is by the end of this module, you will be able to complete a comprehensive implementation plan for your chosen learning delivery modalities. Let me just emphasize that your implementation plan will cover organizing learners and monitoring their learning, learning resource management, including the distribution and collection of learning materials. We have continuing professional development of teachers, risk management, and communicating with education stakeholders. Now, as we go on our module, the content of this session will cover Lesson 1, Assessing the Readiness of Learners, Teachers, and Parents, and your LAC Session 6. Lesson 2, Learning from Selected LDM Implementation Models, which covers a LAC Session 7. Lesson 3, creating your LDM implementation plan, which covers your LAC session 8 and 9. And so, if you also have optional activities, which is determined by your LAC members under the guidance of your LAC leader, you may do so. With this module, it is estimated that you will be required for an 8-hour period for completion of this module. So let's proceed to Lesson 1. Lesson 1 is assessing the readiness of learners, teachers, and parents. So in the previous module, you were asked to assess your school's readiness to implement your chosen LDMs using a data-driven decision-making process. However, you, as the school leader, need to also make sure that your learners and those that support their learning, namely the teachers and the parents, are ready for the opening of the school year in this time of pandemic. This is to help ensure that your delivery of basic services is learner-centered. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify factors that might affect learning, as well as further steps to improve the readiness of your learners, teachers, and parents. For the key topic and concept of this session, we have what we call the readiness checklist for learners, teachers, and parents as your material resource. Another resources required are your readiness checklist and, of course, your study notebook. And so, let's proceed. For your activity 1, you have to open the readiness checklist for learners, teachers, and parents file. You have to study the checklist, and as you go over the checklist, you have to write down your thoughts in your study notebook. And of course, you are required to accomplish the readiness checklist, including the action steps or the intervention section. Then after you're able to accomplish the readiness checklist for learners, teachers, and parents, you have to conduct your LAC session 6 as your activity 2. This time, you are to coordinate with your LAC leader on the date and time for this LAC session. And in this LAC session, you have to do the following. You have to share your accomplished checklist, your proposed interventions, and your reflections on the checklist. And then after that, you have to set a date and time for their LAC session which you will hold at the end of the lesson 2. Okay, but before you are able to complete the lesson 1, make sure that you're able to complete the readiness checklist for learners, for teachers, and for parents. Sa mga teachers po, it's very easy for us to coordinate with them because we have a hold with them. Okay, we can communicate with them, we can text them, we can chat them, insofar as getting the information required. However, it will be hard for our parents and learners, especially when they do not have internet connection and they do not know how to fill out the entries online. But however, we have to do certain mechanisms on how we can get information from them. Like this one of our school heads is able to come up with the readiness checklist for learners and parents through Google Forms. And so one of the best practices they are able to come up with is to translate the readiness checklist into Tagalog, like what you see here. And then after the parents and the learners were able to fill out the online form, this will already generate the results. So it's very easy for them to gain the information that they need for the readiness checklist. Kasi po, if you're going to do it in a hard copy and you're going to ask for the parents and the learners to fill out the form, it would require so much of your time. But if you're going to do it online, and when you have sufficed the data already, okay, it will be easy for you to generate the results. Okay? And so after getting those information through the readiness checklist of your parents, your teachers, and your learners, you have now to conduct your activity 3, which is the LAC session 7. In this LAC session, you have to discuss the following: your thoughts. You remember you are to write your thoughts about the readiness checklist in your study notebook. And then after that, you have to um, understand also the implementation of the learning delivery modalities of your chosen learning delivery modalities of your school. And so there are a series of models which are included in this module, like the Navotas, wherein you have to watch the video so that you can see how they implemented or they have prepared for their learning delivery modalities. So here, you discuss your thoughts on the implementation models and which one is viable option for your school. And then you have to come up with your own implementation model diagram. So revise your implementation model diagram based on the discussion, if appropriate, and set the date and time for LAC session 8, which you will hold at the end of the lesson 3. Then after that, you are done with lesson 2. You are now to proceed to lesson 3. Lesson 3 of this module is entitled Creating Your LDM Implementation Plan. This lesson will walk you through the LDM implementation plan template. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to discuss the different parts of the template and how to complete them. You have to complete your school implementation plan and improve on your school implementation plan based on feedback from your peers. The key topic and concept of this lesson is your LDM implementation plan. Remember, this is the output that is required for you for this module, for you to accomplish your LDM implementation plan. And the resources required for you to finish this module is the LDM implementation plan template and, of course, your study notebook. And so, for the activity 1 of the lesson 3, you have to open the LDM implementation plan template file. You have to go over the template and determine what information you need in order to create your plan. And then jot down your thoughts in your study notebook. For your activity 2, you have to conduct LAC session 8. in this last session, you have to do the following. Discuss your understanding of the template and the information that you need to accomplish it. Set a deadline for each school to complete their implementation plan, and set a date and time for LAC Session 9. This should be after all the school LAC implementation plans of your LAC members have been completed. And so, what is the content of the Learning Delivery Modality Course 1 implementation plan? Okay, so this is the template, wherein part 1 is what we call the learning management. The objective under this is to establish the mechanism of organizing learners and managing learning. So we have here 5 columns. The first is the list of activities, the expected output results, the date of implementation or time frame, the budgetary requirements, if there are any, and of course, who will be the person in charge. The first activity for your learners' class organization is to organize classes. By this time, you are already thinking of how the class program will work in your particular school. And then what possible process would our learners follow in order for them to complete a week's module, okay? And so what subjects are to be taught in a particular day, or what subjects may be taught in a particular week. And then what time frame do they have to follow? Okay, so when you organize classes, you have to provide a class program for every grade level, for every section, for every learning delivery modality. And then teachers may be required to prepare weekly learning plan, or sometimes we call that an action plan or a lesson plan. Then we have to prepare individual monitoring plan, organize teachers for community learning sessions, if any, if there are any, and then organize, orient home and or community learning facilitators, if there are any. So when you come up with following activities, make sure that you are definite with what expected output or results you want to gain at the end. And then make sure that you have your date of implementation or the time frame that you will be needing. If you're going to need budgetary requirements, of course, you have to list them and who are going to be the person in charge. Okay. Next is what we call the learning resources. So in learning resources management, the objective under this is to improve availability of the learning resources to reach 100% in all learning areas and grades across the quarters. So in the school, we have 4 quarters: first, second, third, and fourth quarters. So are we ready with the learning resources that we need in order to implement the learning delivery modalities we chose? Okay, so under this learning resource management, we have activities such as, but not limited to, set up of inventory system of learning resources, acquire or request for learning resources, develop learning resources, or quality assure locally developed learning resources. If you have additional activities, you can add columns for this. And then if you have these activities, again, we must list down our expected output or results. And then what is the deadline? Of course, we have to set the deadline, the time frame that we will be needing in order for us to complete the learning resources that we will be using. And then the budgetary requirements that we need. Say, for example, we have to produce the learning modules. We have to reproduce the materials. So how much is the budget that we will be needing? And of course, who will be in charge of this responsibility? And then we also have to take into consideration the learning resource distribution and collection management. Yes, we have the learning resources, but it doesn't end there. how are we going to distribute it? How are we going to make the process functional? Okay, so under this, our objective is to ensure that all learners receive their learning materials and are collected for assessment. So under this, we have the following activities, but not limited to, because if you have other activities, you can add a column for that or a row for that. Develop system of distribution and collection of LRs. We have to distribute and collect the learning resources and monitor and report distribution and collection. So what are your expected output? What is the deadline for each? What is the budgetary requirement, if there's any? And who are the person in charge? Another is the part 2, which is the continuing professional development for teachers and other school personnel. Under this, the objective is to improve our PPSD-based competencies of teachers in managing learning in the learning delivery modalities. So under this, we have the following activities: the needs assessment, consolidation, and prioritization, planning for professional development interventions. We have developing and implementing school-based interventions, monitoring teacher professional development activities, and assessing their professional development. So in here, you have to provide the timeline, who is the person in charge, and what are the necessary budgetary requirements. So the next is the part 3, which is the risk management, which is the main objective is to identify risk, to prevent it from happening, or to mitigate its impact on the key implementation. So under this, we have the components of LDM implementation, which is the learning management, the learning resources, the teachers, continuing professional development, and others. So what are the risks? Ano yung possible issues and concerns that you might encounter as you go along the process? So when you identify the risk, you have to identify also its severity in terms of happening. So likelihood to happen, you are to write if it is high, medium, and low. Severity of risk, is it high, medium, and low? What are your preventive actions for that? Or how are you going to at least mitigate the risk? So you have to list down your mitigating actions. For part 4, we have the communication plan for the implementation of LDM. This time, you are going to orient now the different key players in your learning delivery modalities system of education in your particular school. So we have there our stakeholders, who are the learners, the parents, the teachers, and the community stakeholders. It's very important for you to hold an orientation for them to understand the learning delivery modalities of your school. And as you go along the process of orienting our key stakeholders or key players, you have to highlight the following messages to them and use the communication media or platform in order for them to be informed, okay? And then the timeline that you're going to be using for your orientation or communication plan. Say, for example, for learners, your key message should be that learning continues to secure future and how this LDM can make learning happen in the midst of the pandemic. For our parents, the child's education is important and has to be supported at home, and emphasize the role in the LDM. For our teachers, we fulfill our mission to educate the child amidst these challenges, how to make LDM succeed. And for community stakeholders, education is a collective responsibility. Community support is critical in the LDM implementation. And so after completing your learning delivery modalities implementation plan, you have to make sure that all the data that are needed is at hand. And of course, if you need to seek advice from your leader or your coach, you may do so. And then after which, you have to conduct your LAC session 9. So in this, you have to answer the following. You have to share and discuss the completed school LDM implementation plan. Check whether you have completed it according to your common understanding of the template. Revise it based on the feedback from other LAC members, your LAC leader, and your designated coach. Then submit your revised plan to your LAC leader, who, after checking your submission, will then submit it to your coach. Set a date and time for LAC session 10, which you will hold as you go through the module 5. Congratulations for completing Module 4. You are now ready to proceed to Module 5. Thank you very much.